Men of Honor film. The story begins in the year 1940 in the American state of Kentucky. And there was a boy named Carl who always helped his father with their farm, but his father refused to help him and asked him to pay attention to his studies in order to have a big future and be able to leave his work in agriculture. And his father asked him to promise him that he will not be like him, a simple farmer, and must affect society. And when Carl heard his words, he agreed to it and swore that he would complete his studies and arrive. As the years passed, Carl grew older and started helping his father on the farm. And one day, Carl joined the American Naval College, and his father came to say goodbye to him. He was very happy with his son, and he asked him to work hard in this field and not disappoint him in it, and told him that your chance there will be better, and asked him to break all the rules that are set by black people, and this thing because of the racism that was at that time on. And in the meantime, Carl arrived at the ship and saw that the black soldiers are the ones who cook for the whites and serve them in all areas. Carl then saw the white soldiers swimming, and he knew that blacks were not allowed to swim, but only had to do service duties. Then he decided to break the rules and went swimming in the sea. And when the captain saw him, Ellen sent a white soldier to get him out. But Carl was quick to swim, and the white soldier failed. And in the meantime, the officer knew what Carl had done and decided to imprison him because he violated the rules set by the U.S. Navy. The officer told him and said to him, "I submitted a request to you to move to the divers' school." And after the end of his prison sentence, he went to the school. The first thing the guards arrived was not to let him enter because he is black, but he was surprised when one of the officers came to him and told him that there is no place for you here because you are black, and this is a place reserved for white people. But Carl refused his order and stayed in his place. But the officer, when he saw his determination, allowed him to move to the school. When a white man entered, he spat on him because the white soldiers considered the blacks to be mere slaves or less valuable in life. But at the same time, the officer came and decided to introduce them to their new colleague Carl. But there was a white soldier named Rock, who told them that we were not going to stay in this room because this room had a black person. So they went out of the room except for a white person, who was a good person. And the blacks consider him human like them, and he never detracted from one of them. And he is the only one who stayed in the room after everyone left it. And in a second scene, after midnight, the leader came and took Carl out of the room with cold water and told him that the time for exercise had started, and he pulled him and dipped his head in water. He used to do this in order to pressure him and make him leave college because he don't wanted black people to study at the Naval College. But suddenly I remember his father saying that he had to break all the rules on black skin, and he gave him a promise that he would settle this thing. On the morning of the second day, the officer went to the person who received him and stayed with Carl in the room and told him that you are a writer and that he can stay underwater for 4 minutes. And he said to him, "Yes, it is true." The officer gave him very heavy weights and went down with May. But he could not withstand 4 minutes, and after that, adjust his dismissal from the Naval College. Carl felt guilty because of him, because this soldier was fired because of him. But he couldn't do anything. And on the second day there was a drill to repair the ships that were under the water. And suddenly the ship moved, and when it moved, it had a partial collapse. But the one who was repairing the ship suddenly got stuck in the air hose and was about to die, and his friend who was with him could not help him and pull him out. And in the meantime, Carl took the air hose and entered on a soldier to help him. And indeed, after more than one attempt, he was able to reach the soldier and change the air hose and save him with difficulty, and his friend who was with him, he left him and went because he was afraid for himself. Then the commander awarded the soldier who escaped the Medal of Courage, and all the soldiers knew that he escaped and that he was a coward. But they could not object to his decision, because it is impossible for the commander to give the Medal of Courage to a black soldier. Despite everything that was happening, Carl never gave up and was determined to achieve his dream. Carl Carrar then calls his father, but suddenly discovers that his father died of illness, and he did not have the money for the cost of treatment. And when he heard that, he was sad and annoyed, and kept crying for him. And then he went to the bar to drink. But when he asked for the drink, suddenly the owner of the bar expelled him and told him that the bar does not receive black people. And then her colleague came and expelled him from the bar, and the leader said to him, "You are trying to settle yourself better than whites." He replied to him and told him that I was better than all of you. He was talking with complete anger. So the leader challenged him to a diving competition and told him who stays more underwater will win. And Carl said, "If I win, you will return my friend to the Naval Academy, and if I lose, I will leave." And indeed, the commander agreed. When the competition started, two were fighting brutally, but suddenly the leader started bleeding. He fainted, and Carl won the challenge, and everyone looked at him with amazement at the power he possessed. After that, the commander went to the camp manager and told him about Carl, and the terrible power that he has. But the manager replied to him and said that a black soldier should not join the American Naval College. But the commander told him that he passed all the tests and skipped them very fiercely, and the last test remained, and if he won he became the leader. But the manager told him that you should not let him win, and try with all the ways to lose it, because I don't want a black leader. And in the meantime, the commander came in on Carl, and told him you are brave and professional. But the camp manager refused to be the leader because you are black. So Carl said to him, "You hate me, and you are a loser." Not only your boss agreed. At that time, the commander got angry and broke Carl's radio, which was a gift from his father. And then the commander held the picture of Carl's father and told him what his father was saying to him so that he would be brave and not give up. Carl told him, "My father told me that I shouldn't disappoint him, or that I promised him this thing at the expense of my life." And on the second day, it was the last test to become a leader, and it was to install a pipe under the water. And in the meantime, Carl came and prepared himself for the test, then went down to the water and asked them to give him the bag that contained the tube. But suddenly the manager was looking at him with a look of hatred, and the leader broke the pipe into pieces. And there he started, Carl trying to collect the pieces piece by piece. 4 hours passed and another soldier came out. Or in this period we know that it was very cold. So Carl kept collecting the parts until he passed the test. And after a while it was night, and the commander called the manager and asked him to get Carl out because it was cold. The manager refused and asked him to leave him until he died, so that he would be a lesson to all the blacks who want to resist the whites. Commander Carl ordered him to come out of the water, but Carl refused, telling him that I was a diver and that I was willing to die to complete my mission. The commander did not pay attention to his words and tried to inform him, but the director told him, "If you get it, I will dismiss you from the U.S. Naval College." And despite the warning, he tried to inform him, and suddenly Carl came out, and he completed the task completely, and was about to freeze. And the commander said to him, "Congratulations, you succeeded in the mission." And on the second day he graduated from college, and was the first black to graduate from the U.S. Naval College. And in a second scene we see the director. He lowered the rank of commander because he helped a black person make the mission successful. Then we see Carl standing with his friend who was kicked out. He went back to the camp because Carl won over the commander. And after a few years, Carl became one of the best commanders in the U.S. Navy. He was on a mission to search for a missing nuclear bomb at sea, and he was really able to find it and get it out with all the other soldiers around. But when they lifted her with the rope, he cut off, and quickly Carl sacrificed himself to save his colleagues. And because of this thing, a man was cut off, and in a second scene from inside the hospital, all the officers honored and loved him, even those who hated him and told him, "We wish you a comfortable retirement." But he refused to retire and told them he wanted to go back to the Navy, but the officers refused and told him, "You can't." But Carl asked them for one last chance, and they agreed, knowing that he would not be able to return like before. Here the commander comes to him, and they went walking outside the house. So Carl asked the commander to train him, and the commander agreed to train him. After he started training him, he got the impression that he was managing Orsini, and he started pressuring him to go back to how he was before. And after the training was over, they went to meet the medical committee. As soon as they entered, the committee started asking hard questions, but Carl was simply answering them. And for the second time, he was able to achieve his ambitions. He was able to succeed with the questions, and then the committee brought the diver's suit weighing 150 kilos and asked him to wear it and walk with it 12 steps. And indeed, Carl agreed, but on the condition that he told them, "If I passed the test, you would return me to the U.S. Navy." And certainly they agreed because they were sure that he would not be able to resist with it. The first thing he wore, they tried to help him stand up, but the committee refused and asked him to do the unit. And in the meantime, the commander began to encourage him. And indeed, Carl moved the first step, second and third steps. As for the remaining steps, his industrial leg was about to break, and he is closer to surrendering. But the leader reminds him of his father's words, and tells him that you promised your father, and after long fatigue and trouble, he was able to complete 12 steps, and was able to win the task, and hiss what remained other than the committee's announcement of victory. When the announcement was made, everyone began to applaud on the occasion of the success he achieved. So Carl was the first leader of African descent, and was able to continue serving for 9 years despite the injury.